Are the Rockets the biggest
Yep.
wild card right now in the West?
They are. They're the biggest wild card, not because they're the most talented, but because they have now tripled or quadrupled down on making good bets. They make the best bets. They've cleared out the paint for Westbrook to attack. They have surrounded him with shooters. James Harden is still doing his thing. And by the way, Harden's defense, which Antetokounmpo pointed out, in fact, of all the super great offensive sniper-type players, Harden's actually one of the better defenders. When you look at his defensive efficiency, how his team performs defensively when he's on and off the floor. They perform worse when he's off the floor than when he's on. But he's better defensively than a lot of the guys who we tend to think of as offensive players who score a lot. Young guys like Luka Doncic, even older guys, even some kind of guys we think of as defensive stoppers like P.J. Tucker or Draymond Green. When you look at Harden's defensive efficiency, it's as good or better than a lot of those guys. He's become a little underrated that way, or quite underrated that way. But Stephen A., what it really all comes down to, as usual, the Rockets will be in games. They'll put a lot of teams that should be better than them in close games. Can James Harden finally hit those big, important shots under pressure? If he's not a choker, if this is just a matter of odds, like eventually he's going to do it and he's not choking, then this ought to be the year already. Like, he's due. And if he has been a choker in the past, which I believe is the case, maybe experience will help him overcome that. They're the wild card.
I'm going to tell you this, Max. I think the Utah Jazz are the wild card. I don't blame you for saying Houston because of what Russell Westbrook and James Harden brings to the table with small ball. And I'm a fan of Gerald Green coming off their bench. I think his athleticism and his ability to make shots at times, I think that he can do some things for them once he gets healthy. But I'm going to go with the Utah Jazz because of several elements that I don't believe the Houston Rockets have. Number one, depth. Number two, a rim protector in Rudy Gobert, who's averaging 14.6 rebounds per game and nearly 2 blocks. Number three, Bogdanovich, who recently won the game against Houston when he hit his three at the buzzer to win in Houston. Donovan Mitchell, we know what a stud this brother is, averaging nearly 25 a game. They're a top 6 ranked defense in the National Basketball Association right now, if I remember correctly. And I love to pick up a Bogdanovich with Mike Conley Jr., with the Donovan Mitchell, with the rim protector that is Rudy Gobert, et cetera, et cetera. When I look at Utah, they play defense. They play strong at home. We understand that they've got some athletes, some boys who can put the ball in the hole. You know, and obviously, if you're Houston, when everything is clicking on all cylinders, nobody can stop them. But they have to be clicking. With Utah, that's not necessarily the case because unlike Houston, they get stops. I'm not saying Houston is bad, is awful defensively, because I think that they're doing a good job defensively. And Elston Turner, who's the defensive coordinator essentially for them, I think he's doing one hell of a job and deserves some praise. It's just that so much is put on the shoulders of Russell Westbrook and James Harden. That's not how Utah plays. And that's why I think they could be a wild card, because if the players were to begin the day, remember, they would be the team with home court advantage, and you'd have to go on the road to beat them, which is never easy in Utah.
Well, look, let me be dumb sports generalist guy for a second, or at least old school hero ball guy for a second. I'm glad you brought up Utah in the first place, because the default position is to talk about the 2 LA teams and then Houston, right? And then sometimes like Portland because of Damian Lillard. But we don't spend enough time talking about Utah and Denver, right? But there's a reason we don't spend that time talking Utah and Denver, because they don't have that singular ball handler or wing who can go get his own shot under crunch time operating at a high enough level. Now, I agree. When you look at the Jazz, you think, if Donovan Mitchell can be that guy, and maybe he can, and maybe the time is now. But my hunch is we're still about a year too early. If he ever can be that guy, we're still probably a year too early for him to do it. In other words, the reason we don't pay enough attention to the well-balanced teams is for as much as the NBA has changed, and you said it last year about the Bucks with Antetokounmpo. Who do you have operating a high enough level that can get his own shot under pressure?
Well, Max, here's the difference between you and I. Here's what I think you're missing. All of those things that you said can be very, very relevant and could assist in Utah losing games during a playoff series. But I think they could win enough games to force a Game 7. And if that Game 7 is in Utah, now we're talking something, because you got yourself a problem. And we all know that Donovan Mitchell is big time. We know he can ball. And because you have somebody that you can give the ball offensively to, then guess what? That's somewhat of an identity. Defensively, you know what they can bring. And they've got spot-up shooters. You can't leave Bogdanovich alone. You can't leave Ingles alone. Mike Conley can do some things, and you know he's a steady presence in what he does defensively because of his experience in the National Basketball Association, and he's been to the playoffs numerous times, including been to a conference finals on a couple of occasions, if I remember correctly. So you got all of those things working for you. Quinn Snyder is a hell of a coach. He has proven to be a hell of a coach in the NBA, and he deserves a lot of praise, just like Malone does in Denver. But I'm telling you right now, when you look at Utah, defense, steadiness, because they got a point guard. Before it was Ricky Rubio, rather. That ain't the case. Now it's Mike Conley Jr. that's going to be there. He's a steady hand at the point guard spot. I'm just saying, when we talk sleeper, when we talk wild card, when we talk somebody that can come up from the rear and really surprise the hell out of you and find themselves in the conference finals by knocking somebody off, I think Utah is a team that can pull that off. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.